Okay, so we're all sharing in the group now. So, welcome everyone who joins in and watches us today. Want to introduce you to Kelli Hawkins. So, Kelli writes reports for a private investigator. That sounds very interesting, as well as novels for adults and children. She lives in Newcastle, New South Wales with her two teenagers, and over the years she's travelled whenever possible and worked all kinds of jobs. Kelli's been a political journalist, a graphic designer, a report writer for a private detective, a mystery shopper, and even a staple remover. Other People's Houses is her first novel, and she has a middle grade fiction debut, The School for Talking Pets, which is out in September this year through HarperCollins. So also thanks to HarperCollins. If people watching ask a question during the Facebook Live, they'll have a chance to win a copy of Other People's Houses. So I've recently read Other People's Houses and really, really enjoyed it. It was a 5 out of 5 for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, really was wanted to keep reading it to find out what was going to happen, and
Oh, that's good.
yeah. So thanks so much for joining us. Would you like to tell us maybe a little bit more about yourself or about your book?
Yeah, well, I think you covered all my jobs. There has been a few of
Sounds
them.
like you've had a few interesting ones.
Yeah, I get bored easily, I think. I always do something different. Yeah, I guess probably about the book is the best way to go. This is it, Other People's Houses. So it's a thriller, a psychological thriller. It's about a woman who's still mourning the death of her son, 10 years, which happened 10 years previously. She's having trouble dealing with that, and she goes to open houses of houses that are for sale and wanders through, and she takes a memento from each one. She likes to, I guess, imagine how her life might have been if her family was still with her. So she goes to open houses and takes something from each one, and then she comes across the hiding house, which is a really lovely, enormous, perfect house, she thinks, in Wahroonga on Sydney's North Shore. And she becomes obsessed with the family that lives there. There's a boy who reminds her of what her son might have been like. He's a teenager now, and the parents. She used to know knew the mother at university. So she becomes obsessed with them and begins basically stalking them, I suppose. And things get a bit out of control, and and then we see what happens in the end, whether all sorts of things go on after that.
Mm,
I don't want to give it away.
yeah. And could you tell us a little bit about how you got your idea for the book?
Yeah, the open house real estate idea just sort of came to me. We were selling or buying or both our house at the time, which I've done a couple of times since. And I've always had an interest in open houses and selling houses and buying houses. It's just a really interesting thing how we let people come into our houses when you're having these, when you're selling and look all through your stuff. It's just normally we're so private, and then suddenly people just can wander through. And I just thought that was a really, I don't know, and the idea of someone, I guess I was reading books with unreliable narrators, and the idea of someone who might take something and why would she do that, and what's her story, I guess, was the main reason. But yeah, I just like the idea of, I thought real estate is such a big thing in Australia, and particularly in Sydney, and so I had to set the book in Sydney. Even though I'm living in Newcastle, it just seemed like it had to be a Sydney sort of book. So I guess it was about the real estate aspect, and then the other part was this woman who was still grieving, and my kids were little when I started writing it, and I guess it's that idea of what would you do in her situation and how would it affect you. So those two things just really came together for me to make which is what I do for the book.
Yeah. And writing reports for private investigator, that sounds like a very interesting job. And do you get some ideas from that for writing psychological thrillers?
Not as many as you would think, because it's probably not as exciting as it sounds,
Okay.
because the reports are more, it's just surveillance, so often people aren't doing a real lot, and it's for insurance and workers' comp, that sort of thing. So
Okay.
it's not adultery or
Yeah.
things that might be really juicy.
And could you
Yeah,
tell?
it's interesting. I guess the
Oh,
idea of
sorry.
watching people and what people are doing is interesting.
Yeah,
Having us watch them, yeah.
yeah. And could you tell us a little bit about if you have always wanted to be a writer and when you actually like got to start your first book?
Yeah, I guess I didn't always want to be a writer as such, but I always liked writing. I was one of, I think a lot of writers are all the same. We all like writing when we're little, and then we
Mm,
like English, and I liked English and history and did all those subjects at school. But it never really occurred to me to be a writer. It wasn't a real job, I guess. It didn't seem like something I could just do. You had to go out and get a paycheck, I suppose, week to week. And also, it's a big job. The thought of writing a novel, that takes ages.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's not like, yeah, I wasn't ready to do that. And I probably didn't even really think, I always wanted, I guess, yeah, like a lot of people who were readers when they were young, the idea of having a book on the shelf that's yours is probably would have been my dream, but I would never have thought it would be something I could do. Um, so I studied journalism because that was probably the closest thing to writing for a career that I knew of. But I didn't do that for too long in the end. Like I said, I think I get bored a bit too easily.
Mm,
And
mm,
journalism, I'm actually like a lot of writers, an introvert. So journalism is actually a lot more. You need to be a lot more out there than probably I realised. So I moved on
mm,
to various other things, but writing was always my favourite thing, I suppose. And so I started. I didn't. I guess I started when my kids were little, and I had a bit more time because I was working less, working part time at that time, and I was reading the things that I was reading books to them and the things they were reading, and some of them were so terrible.
yeah.
They just like some terrible books sometimes, and also some of them were great. And so I guess both those things, like with the bad ones, I think, well, surely I can write something that's better than that, or
Mm,
with the good ones, I'd be like, it would be great to write something that was so good. So I guess that's when I thought, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to try, never going to do it. So I started writing. I started trying to write kids' books, but actually didn't end up doing that. I wrote young adult, the first few books that I wrote,
okay.
um, because I think young adult paranormal romance, because that was everywhere at the time, and I thought it would be nice to get published. So I wrote a couple of those and had a little bit of interest from publishers, but nothing came of it. And then I wrote a kids' book, and nothing came of that. And then then I wrote this adult book. So it's been, yeah, a bit of an up and down journey, which I think again is pretty common for most writers. But
Yeah.
yeah, I always liked the idea of it, but never really thought it was going to be something I would do.
Yeah. And did you have someone who really supported you to try and write your first book?
Not really. Not really. I didn't tell anyone really that I was doing it except for
Mm.
my husband, and he was supportive. But he was a big he died actually shortly before I got the
Oh
publishing
no,
deal.
sorry to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he was a really big reader. Um,
Mm.
we both were. So he was very he read I think I gave him a couple of things to read, but he just was very unhelpful because his comments were just like, yeah, that sounds like a real book. And that was it. So
Mm.
he was the only person I showed things to early on because I wasn't, in writers groups or anything like that. So no, I didn't really. It wasn't until I've been writing for a number of years that I really started sending it out there and showing it to people. So I did most of it just, yeah, just on my own,
Mm.
which suited me at the time. But
Mm.
yeah.
And how hard or difficult did you, sorry, how hard or easy did you find it to get first published?
Yeah, it was a long process and then it was fast for me. It was kind of weird. So like I said, I started writing for quite a while before anything, and I think for me, I needed that time. I probably wasn't good enough. The first things which I think is, yeah, just the first things I wrote probably weren't worth publishing, or I'm sure they weren't worth publishing.
Mm.
So I started probably writing in about 2010, and I think I gave myself like a short deadline, like I want to be published in 5 years or something, which didn't happen. But I surprised myself by still wanting to write anyway. So, which I guess for me, like I said, is pretty good. So I suppose I just kept at it. But so I wrote three books, didn't get published, and then had the idea
Okay.
for this one, the adult book, and sent it off to, it was an Allen and Unwin Faber Academy Scholarship, and I got that scholarship in 2016. So that meant I travelled to Sydney every week to basically to write the book. So that was based on the idea for the book and the short story that I'd written. So in 2016, I wrote the book, and then like first draft, yeah, and then I put that away, and then I actually wrote the kids' book that I'm having published, and I put that draft away. And so then over the next few years, there was just a lot of editing and fiddling around and sending it off here and there, but nowhere. I didn't send it to any publishers until quite late, and then my husband got sick. He was diagnosed with cancer, so that was in 2019. So he was given 2 months to live.
Oh, wow.
So he lasted 9, I think, and died in 2019, mid 2019. And then I gave myself 6 months off work because it was quite traumatic, obviously, for the kids and I. So I said, I'm going to have 6 months off work. And that's when I sent the book out, started sending the book out to agents and had some interest. And then it was only 4 months later, I think, I had a book deal for both of the books.
Okay.
So it happened quite quickly, but there was a lot of time when nothing happened. Yeah, so it was sort of...
Sounds like you've had a lot of hard times, yeah.
It's been up and down. It's been a bit a rough couple of years, but yeah.
And we've got quite a few people watching, which is great. So just reminding the people watching to type your questions and comments, and you'll have a chance to win a copy of Other People's Houses. So Elizabeth is wondering about your next book. I think I said before it was out in September this year. Is that right?
Yeah.
Are you able to tell us some more about that?
Yeah. It's a middle. It's completely different, as you can imagine. It's a middle grade novel, and so it's called The School for Talking Pets, and it's about a boy called Rusty Mulligan who's got a blue tongue lizard. That's his pet, called Bongo. He's Australian, and he wins a week at Miss Alice Einstein, who's Albert Einstein's granddaughter. He wins a week at her School for Talking Pets. They've just the world has just been shown the pets that they can talk. So he goes over there. It's a bit like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I guess, with 4 other kids and pets.
Yeah.
And then they get to the island where the pet school is, and there's some people that come want to shut it down. So there's a lot. It's a bit of an adventure, I suppose, but it's fun. It's a funny book, so it's quite different, which is nice when I'm editing or doing something on this one, and then I go to that one.
Yeah. And are you working on another book at the moment?
Yeah, I'm working on 2 more.
Okay,
So
wow.
I'm working on the next adult book, I've just written the first draft for. So it's a similar style of book, I suppose, set in Newcastle this time. And so I'm editing that at the moment, just doing structural edits. And then once that's complete, or that round of edits is complete, I need to start another kids' book.
Okay.
So I've got that in the back of my head as well.
Yeah, sounds like you're going to be busy.
Yes.
Patricia's wondering if you have a strict writing regime.
It's not strict, but it should be. It depends. When I'm writing, like I haven't been writing for the last little bit, I've been sort of editing in between things. But when I am writing, I do try and get a certain amount of words done. I don't always succeed, but I try, and it depends on how much I have to write. But I aim for between 1,000 and 2,000. But I will have a certain tally for the week, or that sort of thing. So I do try and sit down and get those words done. Sometimes you don't, because you might have to research or you go off topic a little bit. But I would say it's not strict, but I do try and write, if not every day, then at least every weekday while the kids are at school.
Because do you still have your other job as well? Yeah.
But I'm not. It's not. It's not as there's not as much of it as there used to be. So I
Okay.
have more writing time at the moment,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah. And Nalima says she loves the pink roller skate behind you. She's wondering if there's a story behind it.
ah yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a good one. I've had that for a while. I like having that up there.
And sorry, I lost where I was. So Kelly is
Hello?
saying
Oh.
that it sounds like you are dabbling in a bit of everything. What is your favorite genre to write? Do you have a favorite of the adult or the children?
I don't know if it's a favorite. I find the kids stuff a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe because it's less emotionally draining, and it's more light, more sort of fun to write. So I suppose I find that easier, but I don't really have a favorite. I think that's part of my problem, and I think, um, yeah, because I started doing YA, I've tried picture books. I tend to, like I said, probably get a bit bored, or I'm not very good at just settling down with one thing. So I do
Mm.
bounce around between things. Um, which can be why it can be bad, I think, because you don't get as good at one thing as you maybe should. But yeah, I like having the two options. I think that works for me because it does give me, I don't know, I like reading different types of things. And yeah, I like, if I could do my own thing, I'd probably write something completely different every time, but it doesn't really work that way in
A little
publishing.
bit like how you've had lots of different jobs.
Exactly. Yeah. Just try something new all the time. But
Yeah.
yeah, at some point you have to do, and readers do. They want you to see something familiar, and that's how publishing is as well. So
Mm.
writing something completely different can be probably not the best idea, but it's
Yeah.
it's fun to write new things.
Yeah. And readers wondering if there's a particular genre that you like to read. And I'm wondering also if maybe there's something you've been reading lately that you want to recommend to us.
So, um, I read similar things to what I write, so I do like that sort of thriller genre, or I like crime in general. But I will read all sorts of things, from literary stuff to romance to, yeah, to fun to humorous stuff.
Mm.
But I do probably, in the genre I write in, is what I read mostly. It's what I like to read. So I guess what I've been reading lately, I just finished the Deborah Oswald
Oh,
Family
yes.
Doctor,
Yep. I read
which
that
was
one. I love
great.
that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which was really good.
Yeah.
Um, Quite different to what I was expecting from the title, actually,
Mm.
but really good. I did enjoy that. And I'm just now reading The Family Upstairs,
Oh,
Lisa Jewell,
yes. Yep. I've read
which
that
I'm
one
about
as well.
halfway through
Yeah.
that one.
Yep.
Yeah, which is good. So I like that sort of book. Some of the other ones I've been reading lately from the library, so I don't have them, but I think it was The Guest List by Lucy Foley was
Okay. Yeah.
a
That's a
good
good
one.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, that I've
Yep.
read recently. And and I read there's a lot of really good Australian crime and thriller writers. So I've read The Good Teacher,
Mm.
Petronella McGovern was
Yep.
great, and The Good Sister. There's lots of goods.
Yeah.
Sally Hepworth,
You
so they
sound
were
like
great.
you read a lot of all of those ones you've mentioned. I've all read
Yeah,
and loved
yeah,
all of them. So
yeah.
you must be.
I tend to, there's so much new stuff coming out that you're just
Mm.
trying to stay on top of it. So I've read a lot of those, but then I read Meg Mason's Sorrow and Bliss, which was great, which
Mm.
is quite different to what I write. So yeah, I like lots of things. I do like reading YA as well, and I do read kids books just to stay on top of
Mm.
it. So yeah, so there's always a lot to read.
Yeah. And could you tell us how much research you do for your books and how you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I do definitely do research, but not being historically, I don't really have to go into a lot of detail. But
Mm.
to write anything, you need to research a fair bit, even just down to the suburbs. If I'm writing, and how much, if I'm writing about real estate, how much houses might cost and what they look like, and so there's a lot of research you do online for that sort of stuff. Yeah, so I think it's just never ending, really. It's just like you think something to yourself, even just, with how someone dies, or, how they're going to, just all little things. So I guess it's constant research, even though tend to be contemporary and not too heavy on the research side. And then with kids' books, it's even the same. I mean, maybe more in some ways for the kids' books, because you're just trying to find sort of, more crazy things maybe, or, things that you don't always know. So, it's always research.
Yeah. And could you tell us what you think makes a good story?
Yeah, that's a hard one. A good story. I guess everyone's different, because there's books. I mean, a good story is hard because not everyone likes the same thing. And I've read
But for you,
books,
for you, what do
for
you
me,
think? Yeah, for you.
character is
Mm,
probably the main thing. Even when I write, plot comes last for me, which is not always good.
mm,
But the characters are more important for me than the plot. And sometimes even, if I'm reading a book and there's a lot of action or whatever, I can skim that quite easily, and I don't really picture it too well in my head, but I know very well what the characters are like. And if I like the characters, that is often a book that I will like. When you get annoyed by the characters, you don't always enjoy the book, for me. So I guess story, for me, story is more about characters and plot, I'd say. And other than that, just well, reading thrillers and stuff. I guess something that just keeps you wanting to not put it down. So if it's a sort of book when I'm cooking dinner that I've got the book open next to the recipe and I'm reading it like while I'm chopping up things, then it's sort of, for me it's something that really makes me want to keep reading. But having said that, sometimes slower books are equally, I can love them equally as much. But generally, I guess it's something fast paced and something with good characters.
yeah, yeah. And it sounds like you read a lot. Are you reading a few books a week or?
I'm not really, well, it depends on what I'm doing. I was reading, because I was having a bit of a between book writing sort of time, I was reading more, which was great. Like, I really like it. I've got kids, and I'm a single parent now, so I do try and spend time with them and not
Mm,
be off reading too
mm,
much, because that would
mm.
be a bit, So it's hard. You've got to balance it a little bit, when sometimes you just want to read, but you also want to do other things, and you've got to be social and do stuff as well, and get out
Yeah,
occasionally.
yeah.
Do
And
some
it sounds like you obviously went through a lot of really hard times, and I'm sure you do now
yeah,
as well. Have you found that reading helped you escape a bit, or did you turn away from
always.
read? You
Yeah,
found that.
yeah. I think
Mm,
always, even regardless of, always, but probably no more through that time than other times. But
okay.
I think
Yeah.
it always does,
Mm,
because it's just a whole other world, really, isn't it? And it does. And also, I read, reading after Matt died, and during that time was quite difficult, because certain things you just did not want to read,
mm,
or were just really
mm,
hard, or even, you're like, oh my god, why am I reading this? This is,
mm,
he just wanted to read different types of things.
yeah.
And after he died, I read a few things to sort of, that helped me get through it, to a certain extent,
Mm,
which was good, to see other people going through similar things, and that sort of stuff,
yeah.
because I don't really know other people who've gone through that much. So
Mm,
it was,
to try.
it does
Yeah.
help for sure.
Yeah. And I've got a question from Kelly. She says you seem to have similar reading taste to quite a few of us, which is what I said
Yeah.
before. Are there any new book releases that you're looking forward to that you've heard about?
Yeah, I really want to read Nicola Moriarty's book. I haven't read that yet. That's high on my list. That's not
Yeah,
out
I'm
though.
actually just reading that at the moment.
Oh yeah, that's high
And
on my list.
and she's joining us tomorrow.
Oh, I saw that actually. Yeah. So that one. There are a couple. I can't think of them off the top of my head. I did really enjoy. Was it called Girl A? I think it was. I can't remember who wrote it. A British book.
Yeah, I think I've heard that one, but I haven't. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's one called The Girl on the Walls, I think,
Okay.
that's coming. and I haven't read that either.
Mm.
It's really new. So yeah, there's a few. Oh, and Candace Fox's new
Oh,
one.
yes,
That
yeah,
would be good. So
yeah.
yeah, nothing that's probably not you haven't heard of, but yeah,
Mm.
there's quite a few on my list.
Yeah. And Kate is wondering if you have any tips for aspiring writers.
um, yeah, I guess there's a few. The main one is just to write, and I know that people always say that, but it really is the main thing is just to sit down and do it, get your first draft done, and go from there because you need that before you just need to write, and you need to read. So both those things, and then as far as getting published, I think I mean, you just have to write what you think is the thing to write for you, I suppose, and believe in yourself, even though,
Mm.
which is the hardest thing because as a writer, like writing a novel takes such a long time and it's such a big undertaking, and you have to trust that you can do it, but at the same time you have to take advice and you have to take time out of your life, and it's just a really big ask, I think. So you
Mm.
have to just, yeah, if you're really keen to do it, you just need to sit down and get it done, and go from there. And even if, like me, you write 3 books before you get
Mm.
one published, because I think that happens to a lot, and I think you do get better. And if you really want to get published and you keep at it, I think most people will. It's just you tend to fall by the wayside if you're not careful, because life gets in the way, or you don't have the confidence in yourself, which I think is a really hard thing to maintain when
Mm.
you're, starting out. So
Mm.
yeah, it's a hard one, but I think my advice would be to keep at it if it's something that you really want,
Yeah.
because
Thank.
that's the only route to getting there.
Yeah. Thanks for that advice. Kate's wondering if you go to writers' festivals.
Well, I'm pretty new. As an attendee, I've been to a few, but as a presenter, I've only been to one, and I think I've got another one coming up in June.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think I'm hoping to, and I imagine that I will. But at the moment, having only my book only came out in beginning of March, so yeah, mostly if I've been to festivals, it's been to listen, but that's always great as well.
Yeah.
So I'll probably do that, can keep doing that.
Yeah. And Sharon's wondering, seeing as you read so much, how do you stop yourself from using ideas that other authors have?
Yeah, I think that's a good one, but I don't think for me, it doesn't work that way. For me, I guess I hope it's just considered getting ideas from them. Like, I hope I'm
Mm.
not, I think whatever you read, every time I read a book, I go, oh, I need to do that, or that would be great. They're so good at doing this, whatever it is, dialogue or how they've plotted it. So I think you get a lot out of reading, that you can use in your writing. But I don't know that it comes down to the nitty gritty of feeling like you're going to steal their stuff. But I know a lot of
Mm.
people also don't like to read when they're writing because they
Yeah,
do,
I've heard some
yeah,
authors
feel like,
say that. Yeah.
yeah, feel like it sort of maybe either influences them or gets in the way, or they can't find their own voice. And I can see that as well. So I suppose it depends on what I'm writing and what I'm reading.
Mm.
But generally, I find it makes me more inspired, I suppose, if I'm doing them both at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kelly's wondering if you have an interesting writing quirk.
Mm, not really. I'm pretty boring, I think. Yeah, you mean in the process? Well, no,
Mm.
I don't do anything. Like, I know some people like candles, or yeah, or have lots of coffee. I do have lots of tea. I don't drink coffee. Um, and probably too much chocolate. I procrastinate a lot, like, yeah, a lot.
Mm.
But I still make myself do those words. So I try and just tell myself I've got to do them. So stop procrastinating because they have to get done somehow. But it's, no, I'm more just, yeah, sit down and try and write them. But yeah, I'm very easily distracted by putting the washing on or doing
Mm.
something.
Mm. And what do you feel about reviews? Do you read them and yeah, Does it make you
Yeah, I
feel
haven't
good?
had too many yet, so
Mm,
it's not been well. I've had a lot of like bloggers and Instagram book reviewers and that sort of thing read it, and so far, yeah. Well, I think I don't think I could not read them for one. I think I just be have to know what people are saying, whether it's good or bad. So,
mm,
but generally, yeah, I haven't had any, um, really scary sort of reviews. I've had a lot of people read it, and they are scary, especially when you're starting out, because yeah, I was terrified that everyone would think it was terrible. I really, so yeah, still am to really. So if anyone tells me that they like it, I'm pretty happy because I do still expect people not to like it. Um, so yeah, I'm always nervous about what people think, whether it's just someone that I talk to about it or people who review it. But I would always think I can't imagine not being able to not making us or not having to read a review. I think I
mm,
just couldn't not.
mm.
It'd be too yeah.
Yeah, and you've like having your debut novel come out when things are probably not as much face to face and that for promotion. How have you been promoting your book?
Things like this, which is
Mm,
great, which is all new to me because I haven't done much Zoom or anything, really. So it's all pretty new. So things like this, it's getting a bit more normal now. There's a few festivals sort of booked, and I guess I was lucky that like my book, they picked up my book in 2019, and were never really going to publish it in 2020. So it was always
mm,
2021. So in they never really pushed to do it quickly, which in hindsight was probably really lucky because of all the COVID stuff that happened in 2020. So um, yeah, things like this, and I've been doing a lot of social media and Instagram and things like that. So it's more online, but then I don't know any different because I
yeah.
never, and we didn't have a book launch or anything for me for this book, but that was mostly my choice anyway, just because don't really like big things,
Mm,
big events. So yeah, so no, I don't think I know any different to doing this
mm,
sort of stuff.
mm. And could you tell us what writers' festivals you're going to be involved in?
It's one on the it's called Storyfest, I think, on the central no, on the south coast,
Okay.
Ulladulla.
Mm,
Yeah, so I've got that one coming up, but yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't heard about any others yet, so
yeah,
we'll see.
okay. Mm. Just reminding people before we finish off, if you do have any more questions, please type them in comments and you'll have a chance to win a copy of Other People's Houses, thanks to HarperCollins. Could you tell people how they can keep in touch with you and contact you if they want?
Yeah, sure. I'm not. I'm mostly on Instagram. So Kelly Hawkins Writer, I think, is my Instagram handle. I'm on Facebook. You could just find me as Kelly Hawkins. I don't really use that
Mm,
particularly. And there is a website just which is kellyhawkins.com.au. And I think because I write under the name Kelly Ann Hawkins for kids,
okay.
um, just to separate it out a little bit. So, but I think that's redirected to go to that website anyway. But at the moment, it's all pretty new, and I'm pretty light on with a lot of those things. But Instagram
Mm,
is probably the best one, which is Kelly Hawkins Writer.
mm. And have you found many readers have reached out to you?
Yeah, a few actually, and it's been nice, and it does surprise me because I don't know. I guess as a reader, I don't tend to do that. Um,
Mm,
just how I am as a reader. But it's great. It's been surprising how much I've enjoyed. Yeah, having people just say really enjoyed your book, or yeah, just to reach out and say I read your book, and it's yeah. So it's been nice on Instagram, and I've had a few through the website, and yeah, so it's good.
mm, mm. And do you try and respond to everyone who
Yeah,
reaches out to
yeah.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't got that many yet though. I can't respond. Yeah, no, I do definitely do because if they've made an effort to get in touch with me, that's really impressive because,
Mm,
like I said, I don't even think to do that. It's just my personality. But yeah, if someone is interested, for sure, because they obviously have some sort of connection to it, and I think that's really nice. And it's just nice to talk to people who've been interested in you.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks so much for joining us. Been great talking to you today. And
Thank
hopefully
you.
we can talk to you again in the group. Would be great to have a chat again when you've
Yeah,
got a new book
yeah,
out.
that'd be great. Thank you.
And thanks to everyone who's joined in, and thanks for the great questions.
Yeah, thanks.
So, bye, everybody.
Bye.